Welcome to Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Weldin. Today's story is called Wake Up and Snail the Roses, an adaptation of an old fable written for you by Daniel Hinds. Thanks. Enjoy the episode. Wake Up and Snail the Roses. Once upon a time, there was a hungry little snail named Norman. His shell was pinkish-greenish, his antennae were long and proud, and his belly was roly-poly and seemed to always be shouting at him, "Feed me more flowers!" As a result, Norman was only small when you looked at him from a human perspective. As far as other snails went, Norman was the biggest on the block, just an absolute unit, and he didn't show signs of slowing down anytime soon. Every day he ate and ate and ate, and his body grew and grew and grew. He didn't care who got in his way, and he might have kept on growing until he was big enough to leave flowers behind and start eating trees. But then he had a run-in with a rose, and everything changed. The rose was part of a garden, and her name was Barb. She was probably the least popular rose in the whole place, but it wasn't any fault of hers. While the other roses all had perfect red petals that seemed to glow and shine, she was a little too pale, a little too crooked, a little too thorny, and just a little too droopy around the edges. For all that, she was perfectly healthy and happy, at least when the others weren't making fun of her. Planted nearby were two other roses named Blush and Bashful. They were absolutely flawless, with a deep red beauty and finely formed petals. "Good morning," Barb would say, stretching her stem in the morning sun. "How are y'all doing on this fine day?" "Pretty good," said Blush with a sneer. "But I had a terrible nightmare that I was you." She laughed, and Bashful, as always, piled on. "Yeah, when people say they want to wake up and smell the roses, they mean us, not you." The pair laughed together, and Barb sunk on her stalk. She would complain to her mom, a fine old bush, about the teasing, and her mom would always answer the same way. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder," she'd say. "Who cares if you don't look like the others? Looks are only petal deep anyway. It's what's in the roots that counts, and I know you got some good roots, and you know it too. So just be happy and ignore anyone who gives you a hard time." Barb would nod, but it wasn't always easy. One day, Norman the hungry snail, remember him, found his way into the rose garden. He was huge at this point, nearly the size of a baseball, and he was looking for some flowers to devour. The daisies were closest to the door, and they went first. Norman had a bunch for breakfast and a dozen for dinner. After that, the tulips were totaled, and Norman was feeling fat and happy. Finally, he made his way back to the roses.
"Oh, these look delectable," he said. "Red and ripe and ready to be eaten."
He approached one and then shrank back.
"Oh, thorns! Well, this meal just became a prickly situation."
He paused and thought for a moment, and then smiled and made his way over to Blush. The snobby rose was standing tall and proud, and she looked down at the hungry snail with interest. She'd never seen a snail before, so she didn't understand that she should be afraid. "You're a weird little thing," she said. "Are those antennae?"
"They are," said Norman. "And look at you! You're truly a thing of rare beauty. Why, you're almost completely perfect."
"Why, thank you," said Blush. "I know I'm... Wait, almost perfect?"
"Well, yes. Almost completely, beautifully perfect."
Blush scowled. Well, you better check your eyes, sluggo, because I'm as pretty a thing as you're ever like to see. Aren't my petals pristine?
Well, they are,
said Norman. And isn't my stem sublime?
It is, of course it is.
Well, then how am I not perfect?
Well,
said Norman quite carefully,
it's your thorns. They're so sharp and ugly. The rest of you is truly a work of art, but how many works of art have you seen with knives stuck on 'em?
What do you mean?
You've got a pretty little stem and some pretty little petals, but I can't unsee them thorns. You're the just right shape and the just right color, but those points, they're an eyesore. No, a rose shouldn't be too sharp, wouldn't wanna scare away a guy like me. Oh, take this advice to heart. You don't wanna be too prickly. You're a 9.5, just shy of a 10. An A minus, not plus. If perfection is your goal, you're as close as can be. There's just some needly little bits to get rid of.
Norman the hungry snail finished his song, and Blush considered it for a moment. Why, that does make a lot of sense. Why should a beauty like me be so sharp? With a flick and flourish, Blush shrugged off her thorns. In a moment, she was smooth and safe. Now do I look perfect? She asked.
Perfectly edible,
Norman replied, and before Blush could react, he gobbled up all of her petals and left her a bare, bald stem. With a burp, he moved on into the garden. Next, he came upon Blush's friend Bashful. What in the world are you? Bashful asked in her typical teasing voice. You look like a booger with a shell.
Well, you look like the most beautiful flower in the world,
said Norman.
You're stunning, gorgeous. You're just about nearly almost perfect.
Why, thank you, said Bashful, and then she stopped herself. Well, nearly almost perfect, she said. You must be thinking of Barb. She's the ugly one, and I'm supremely sublime.
You nearly are, said Norman. Except
what? Bashful asked eagerly. What in the world could it be?
Well, it's your thorns.
My thorns?
You know, I've hardly ever seen a rose so pristine. You're otherworldly divine. It's just such a shame, such a sad little waste, that you're ruined by your prickly spines. No, a rose shouldn't be too sharp, just soft, pretty, and nice. Oh, I can tell that's what you really are underneath those ugly thorny knives. Yuck, it would be so easy to take things up a notch, live up to your gorgeous potential. You're ready to bloom, just let down your guard and be a beautiful and spike-free garden gal.
After the song, Bashful looked at Norman for a long moment and then smiled. You know what? I think you're right. Why do I have all these prickly little spikes on me? I should leave those for weirdos like Barb. With a shake and a shimmy, Bashful shed all her thorns, letting them pitter-patter to the dirt. And how do I look now? She asked, posing for Norman.
Delicious,
said the snail, and then he ate all of Bashful's petals, leaving her a green stem, bare like a popsicle stick. He went to the next flower in the line, which was, of course, Barb. She was enjoying the sun on her crooked petals without a care in the world. "Wow, what a beautiful rose!" said Norman, trying to play on the rose's vanity once again. "Surely you must be nearly completely perfect." "Oh, I don't think anyone is perfect," Barb said, remembering the lessons from her mother. "Oh, you are, quite nearly, except—" "Except nothing," said Barb breezily. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you just lose the thorns, you'd be so what?" "So beautiful," said Norman. "Without the thorns, woo-wee, you'd be a beauty." Barb paused for a moment. Was the snail telling the truth? She remembered all the things her mother had told her, and she knew she shouldn't care, but she really did want to be beautiful. Just then, the wind blew, and on the breeze, Barb could hear two tiny voices. It was Blush and Bashful. "It's a trick, Barb. Don't fall for it." "He told us the same thing, and when we gave up our thorns, he ate all our petals." Barb gasped and looked down at the snail still staring up at her, waiting for a response. What a nasty, slimy little trickster he was.
I'm not quite sure why you think that I care. How pretty I am or I'm not, it's your opinion. I like my petals and I like my thorns. I'm a fan of everything that I've got. Oh, it's what's in the roots that counts. My mama reminds me every day. She also says that I'm beautiful. If you don't like it, you can go away. Hey, a rose with every thorn still smells just as sweet. And who says we have to be soft? Not me. My petals are pretty, my stem is just fine, and my thorns are good and sharp.
An idea came to her mind. "Oh, you aren't gonna get me that easy. I'm beautiful just the way I am, so you can take your opinions about me and crawl off to wherever ugly slugs like you hang out." "Ugly?" asked Norman, looking down at his bulging body and shiny shell. "I am a perfect snail specimen." "Well, I mean, you could be," said Barb. "Could be how?" asked Norman. "It's just, well—" "What? What?" said Norman. "It's your shell. I'm sorry, but it is hideous." "My shell?" asked Norman. "Really?" "Oh, you'd look way better without it. Just give it a try." Norman shrugged and crawled out of his shell. "Hey, this isn't so bad," he said, and then Barb bent with the breeze and gave him a thorny whip across his soft side. "That one was for Blush." She whacked him again. "And that one was for Bashful." With the second thorny thwack, he went flying across the garden and tumbled out the door. She sent his shell spinning after him. "Now, stay out of my garden," Barb shouted after him. Once they had regrown a bit, Blush and Bashful apologized for having been so mean and thanked Barb for sticking up for them with nasty Norman. "If we hadn't been so vain, we never would have fallen for that snail's schlock." "I wish we had listened to you in the first place, Barb. You have been right all along." "Oh, don't beat yourself up about it," said Barb. "Everyone always says that roses are only supposed to be beautiful. Of course you believed 'em. I'm just glad my mama reminded me that there's more to us than that." "Amen to that, sister." "Yes, ma'am." "And Norman, He was a little shaken after his encounter with Barb, but he was basically fine. He oozed over to his discarded shell and crawled back inside, then slunk humbly away. After that, he stopped being quite so greedy and went from absolutely enormous to just regular large. And he never went near another rose again. The end. Thanks for listening.